lot of work, but you're also juggling a full-time role and a household. And do you have children?
I actually do. And at the time, toward the later after my presidency, I volunteered in Boy Scouts and Junior Achievement.
Wow.
So juggling all that, that was a lot of work. And then later on, because of my experience with volunteering for PMI, I helped start the IIBA chapter here in Rochester, the International Institute of Business Analysis. And that was in 2007, 2008.
Okay.
And because project management, the PMI organization, did not have the business analysis effort in their circle of interest. That years later. So IIBA was just starting to structure themselves, and through having Kitty Haas here as a speaker, she's an IIBA speaker. She was here for a PMI event, and she led me into, why don't you start a chapter here? And with a couple other people here in Rochester, they had an interest, and we started the chapter, and it ran for several years. And I think it's trying to see how it fits now that IIBA and PMI have a piece of the business analysis interest. There's an overlap.
There is an overlap now. Does the local chapter for IIBA still exist?
I do not think that they're in full
operational mode?
Yeah, I don't think so, but I think there is an interest just to see if it could be revived. But then if PMI has an analysis work stream, how do they overlap?
Okay. That's fascinating that you went from project management to informing business analysis.
Well, at the time, I had switched my position from being a project manager to going back to be in the analysis role. So in my career, I've software developed, project managed, did some analysis work, in between tested everywhere. So it's the whole life cycle. So it's a natural fit to build an organization and have all the knowledge I already had from how we ran PMI and how to build an interest in Rochester. And we did. And it mirrored what PMI Rochester chapter was doing.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure you worked hand in hand with the PMI Rochester chapter as well.
Yeah, I certainly kept involved.
I can't imagine you walked away from that.
No, I never walked away. If someone taps me on the shoulder at any time and there's an interest, I will volunteer.
Well, going back, because if I'm learning the structure and the history, you perform your role, your volunteer role, which is incredible, the amount of time and the commitment to be a president of the local chapter. It's not an easy feat. It's not a couple hours a week. It's another full-time job. And then after that, you're on the board, and your voice is still very strong, and you're still ensuring that the strategies are being moved through, and that the current president isn't having a heart attack. How was your learning curve, speaking of which, going into the presidency? What was that step right before?
Well, I had a lot of good samples of presidents that were before me. So, and I'm sure you're interviewing a few of them.
Yes.
I was never at a point that I couldn't turn to one of them for guidance. So it wasn't as if I was standing there alone. We met often. Like I said, I've made some lifelong friends.
Yes.
So, it's not difficult when you have other people helping you. It's when you're standing alone and trying to push something that you're not going to get any support. But I had a lot of support from the people before me and the people on the side of me.
That is definitely a common theme that I keep hearing, is the amount of support. And for those that had, it was a sudden change, the support system was still there. And it was still very strong and very helpful in ensuring the success.
Yeah,
Speaking of
yeah.
which, if you look back on your presidency, you had a period of time where you were preparing for it. You had the short year that you were in it, and you had the period of time after it in which you were still supporting some things through. What was the most shining, memorable type of example of your presidency that just really went to your heart?
Well, the funny thing is, I talk about this moment often because during my presidency, the 2004-2005 year, we celebrated PMI Rochester chapter's 20th anniversary. We had a very large party. We had musicians. We had a magician. And at that party, we had a moment that the magician wanted a volunteer to come up to the stage. And of course, nobody wanted to volunteer. So he turns to me as the president and asks me to come up and volunteer.
Of course.
And of course, I did.
Yes.
He was going to do, he had a side table of things on top of the table. And the next thing I know, he's placing a box on top of my head.
No.
and the box went on my head, and it had an internal frame that it was a very tight fit. And I thought, what's going on? The next thing I know, he's talking to the audience, and I hear like the metal of a sword coming out. And the next thing I know, he's poking a sword, and I could sort of see it through the cracks. A sword through the side, and I don't know, another sword. There was 2 swords poking through this box on my head. And all I could think of was, oh, this is how they do it. You always want to know the secret. Yes. Magician do. Well, it's this internal framework that's not going to poke you or, scare you. But that was a funny moment during that party that, I had to volunteer.
That is fantastic. Oh my goodness. So I think that goes to a lot of what I've been hearing throughout all of these interviews is the amount of opportunities to learn something outside of the box, no pun intended. The things that you normally wouldn't learn if you stayed a software developer, if you stayed in construction or manufacturing. And it is amazing the world that is opened up to you as a project manager and how you get to touch in so many different industries and verticals and learn magician's tricks. Yep. At least he didn't cut you in half.
No, really. And at that time we were also celebrating the fact that we hit our 500th member of our chapter.
That was then? Okay.
It was then. Her name was Bonnie DeRosa. She worked at Nixon Law Firm. I think she's still a member, hopefully. But that was a big thing because we were right on the border of, are we going to hit 500 that year? And we did. And then we did recognize that we had, at that time, about 50% of the membership held their PMPs, too.
That's tremendous.
I don't know if the statistics are now, but that's what it was in 2005.
That is tremendous. And when did you get your PMP?
2003, maybe? Yes.
Which version was that? That's definitely one of the earlier versions, right? That's like one.
I couldn't remember. I wouldn't remember. I don't want to remember. I don't ever want to take that test again. I work hard to keep my PDUs in place, so I don't have to.
I'm with you on that one, by the way. And I think anybody who watches this is going to readily agree with you. Yep, it has not gotten any easier. In fact, as they add chapters, it gets harder. Yes, no, I got mine in 2017, and I will not repeat that. We're done.